big cheers for when they came out. So who's got a question? Who wants to know something about these folks that you don't know?
My biggest question is, what's the biggest change that you've had to deal with in radio in the last 50 years?
Wow, that's a big one. All right. How
hell do you think we are?
Digital editing.
Yeah, I would say just the mediums that we work on in my not quite 50-year career have changed so much, from reel to cassette to DAT recorder to mini disc to digital auditing, and now it's so easy now. And having the computer and being able to Google things and get background on things that you want to do, it's amazing.
But the two of us together have over half a century of news gathering experience. You should know that.
I think the biggest change is social networking. I mean, gosh, I'm on Facebook more than I'm on the radio. And people wonder if I sleep. I don't. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I think it's also the way that we connect with people, too. We're not talking at people. You don't hear the big, deep, well, these guys have the big, deep radio voices, but now it's just more one-on-one. People are connecting, like Clyde said, with social media and just the way we present our stories on the air, too. And the feedback that we get from events like this from you guys.
Well, and I hear that this is not the one and only KXL tour that's going to happen. My understanding is that they're actually, because it's such a success, they're going to take this on the road and actually go out to the community. So you'll all have a chance later on to win a ticket, have some good food, and I guess a couple of drinks, I'm not sure. And enjoy yourself. Well, we thank you all very much for being here tonight for us for Live at 7. Steph is going to take over to continue this this great show here, and our thanks to you. And Joe, I'll send it back to you at the square.
Thanks, Joe.
Woo!
Thank you.
And scene. Nice work, Joe Smith. Thank you very much.
Yay,
Mike
Joe Smith.
Gallimanis. And now let me start with the first question, which I have for you, Rebecca. So I understand that in addition to your co-host duties, you're also the news director, and you have sort of an interesting career. It's one that started in Sacramento, and then you worked in Salt Lake City, as we were talking back in the green room. Did you work at one point with Rush Limbaugh, and what was that like?
Yes, actually, it was funny because that was my very first internship at KFBK. I was probably 17 years old, and he was actually hilarious. He's actually a quite funny guy behind the scenes, and he called me intern. I don't think he ever knew my name. And then I went to Chico State, and I saw him he came to do a talk, at Chico, and I saw him, and he's like, intern, and then for years he called me Chico every time he saw me. So don't ask him if he knows me, because he probably will say no.
Fair enough. The next on tour, I won't do that. Dan, I want to jump down the line a little bit and ask you a quick question. By the way, Dan, this is sort of a brainchild that you had because you've done this in different cities and it was tremendously successful. And it's so nice to see such a good turnout. So, Dan, kudos to you for, getting the ball rolling. And to everybody else whose faces I see out there who organized this, everyone who made this happen. I want to ask you, gosh, you've had, what, a 17-year career so far? What are you going on?
Almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years.
Yeah.
See, why are we joking about whole 50 years in radio? You've bounced back and forth between TV and radio. Which did you like better, and have you ever had a Ron Burgundy moment? What? I have.
I like radio a lot better because I think it's more of it's immediate, and I feel more of a connection with people. Television was great, and I was doing weather, and I anchored, and I covered entertainment, and it was fun. As far as Ron Burgundy, I don't know how many of you are fans of Anchorman, Will Ferrell. Yeah. So you remember the part where he said, "I'm Ron Burgundy," and somebody said, "Who put the question mark at the end of his name?" Well. I was jumping in to fill in for somebody. I think I was still doing weather. I don't think I'd even started anchoring at the time, and it was those cut-ins you see on, that you guys do.
Yep.
In between the Today Show at 8:25, and the anchor wasn't there. We're down to 15 seconds, so the floor director says, this person isn't showing up. You're going to have to jump in and do this, and do a cold read, which means I haven't seen the scripts. I don't know what anything says, so I jump in. I put my microphone on. The light goes on in front of the camera. I say, "Good morning. It's 8:25. I'm Laura Evans," and I'm. So I stopped and I just smiled and I laughed. I said, "No, I'm not." And I said, "I'm Dan Mitchinson." So whatever you read, whatever you've heard about, anchor, present company excluded, reading in the teleprompter, a lot of us sometimes do. So yeah, that was my Ron Burgundy moment.
That's awesome.
It wasn't at the time.
No, but it is now.
Guess what Dan's new nickname is in the newsroom now? Laura Evans. Was it Evans or just Laura? Let's call you Laura.
Yeah.
Steve, now I have a question for you. You do the morning news with Rebecca, but I understand you started out in Chicago, and before you came to KXL, what, 1986?
Right.
Okay, 1986. You were a country music DJ.
I was in the Bay Area. You think that's funny? No. I got to tell you, I love country music. From the first time I heard it, I heard a guy named Charlie Pride, first black country singer to be popular, and I thought, wow, this is like listening to a movie. I love country music. I did it for about 10 years, and I got kind of bored, and I really wanted to go in the news, and I got a chance to do that in Seattle, and I'm very happy.
But now he cranks on the country tunes in cue during the commercials sometimes. Admit it.
I'll bring the guitar next time.
So that's a behind-the-scenes moment. So when you go to commercials, you pot up some country music and...
You have to be careful, because if you pot it up on the internet, it could go out on the air, and you folks are going to go, what was that? So, no.
I love it. Lacey, your story is really awesome. You actually, it is. I mean, I just love it because it's nice when someone really has their feet firmly planted in this soil. I'm a transplant myself. It's been a long time, but it's still nice to talk to someone who grew up in Portland, who started essentially as an intern here, moved your way up the ranks. Hello, co-host, love that. I just want to know what it was that kept you here in Portland as opposed to taking a job in another city.
Well, I was really lucky to land a job at the #1 news station in the city, so I didn't have anywhere else to go in the city. I'd almost landed, my dream job right out of college, except working overnights. That was not a dream. That was kind of a disaster, but I didn't have to do that very long, thankfully. And, I love Portland. I grew up here. All my friends and family are here, so it was more so the city. I didn't want to leave the city to have to go work in some small town in Florida, So you're right. I was really lucky to start working here when I did.
I think it's great. Lars, I have a question for you. Speaking of small towns, I want to talk about where you got your start. And I don't know if this is something off of your official bio, but I quote, Lars started out spinning records and reading news from the edge of a cow pasture in Tillamook.
That's true.
That is factual. Excellent. You were at a small radio station, but then after that, you worked at more than a dozen radio stations.
Couldn't keep a job.
Then TV. So you had a bunch of TV jobs, and then essentially you went back to radio, and then you found this tremendous success that you're enjoying today. 2 radio shows right now you're doing.
Yeah, and I like to think of it as I never left radio, because the whole time I was in TV, I did radio on the side, and when Channel 12 said, you have to pick one or the other, I said, if it's a choice, one or the other, I'll choose radio. No way in the world would I have stayed in TV at the expense of radio. And I do enjoy doing what I do. I love what I do for a living.
But one of the things I want to ask you, in TV, all of us have opinions, and if anyone tells you they don't, they're lying. All of us have opinions. Our job is to try as best we can to keep them out of our coverage. How did you balance that when you had a radio gig that thrives on your opinions versus a TV gig that really discourages that?
It was easy, actually. I mean, most of you probably work at companies where you may disagree with something the company does. I imagine there are probably even some environmentalists out there who work for Weyerhaeuser or Boise Cascade. And does that mean that you come to the job or you go to work at a meat market and say, well, I'm a vegetarian, you shouldn't be buying any of this or killing animals? No, you do your job. And my job was to report on the news and keep my opinion out of it. In fact, what's scary is a lot of people said, well, I thought until you were on the radio doing talk that you were a liberal. I said, why? Well, because you were in television, and a lot of people in television and other parts of the news are liberals. It's present company accepted. But that's what happens, because I said, well, I just kept my opinion out of it, and it was my job to keep my opinion out of it.
I remember the article on Lars in the Oregonian a couple of years ago, growing up in Tillamook, quoting your high school teacher. I'll never forget this. She said, that boy would rather talk than eat.
And Alice Voges was great. Wonderful speech coach, and I owe a lot to her.
That's great.